Hello, welcome back to my car again. I have a bicycle in the back, amongst other stuff that you, thank God, can't see, because I have a lot of crap in my car. Again, still moving. This is actually the last bit of stuff that I needed to get out. Okay. So, this is the last bit of stuff I actually had to get out of my house. Well, now get out of the car. When I get back. It's for those of you who are moving and have moved several times or have moved in general or recently, it is weird calling where you live, where you're moving into your home, it just is. I am not quite used to it yet, but it might as well have been a second home while I was living at home anyway, or at the other house, the house that we just, whatever. So, where I'm moving into, I'm at a stop so I can do this. Where I'm moving into, I was there all the time anyway. So, I'm taking an extended red stop sign stop here. So, I'm there all the time regardless. No, it's just the thing behind me that makes it look like, right about here, there's a thing back there that makes my hair look funny, because it looks like it's a thing sticking out. Well, from my point of view. Anyway, so, kind of like alfalfa hair, except it's not straight up, it's kind of up and over. Anyway, so, don't really know what to say yet. I'm there all the time anyway, so I might as well have been calling it home number 2. And it's really cool because we're building an apartment in the basement for us to move into more permanently. So I might as well bring tools, because they are my tools. So I made sure to get the last bit of my tools to bring with me as well, because I accidentally left my jigsaw at the house to bring to the house. Yeah. House to the house. Anyway, so it's pretty cool though, because that means that I'll be getting to learn, I've been learning a little bit about how the plumbing works and drywall and all this other stuff that normally you wouldn't learn about until you have to do. Well, we have to do. So, learning. Speaking of learning, my last video, the one that I did last night and then I fell asleep and forgot to upload it until just now, and it's 3 p.m. So it's uploading. So this video will probably be put out tonight, which is very weird because it'll be like, it's bright and it'll be dark when it goes up, depending on where you live. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about something the last video, but I'd already gotten where I was getting to. And that is how in games you get into space versus real life. I explained how orbital mechanics sort of works. I kind of gave the hammer over the head version of how it works, the really quick and dirty one. But there's still a lot more to it. I could just as easily get into the right lane and take off before this car hits me in the back. I'm just kidding. So, actually, there's an opening coming. I can go eventually. I really wish I could dual camera this crap, but I can't without it only being a 5-minute video, which I cannot stand. I need to find an app that lets me record for more than 5 minutes dual cam. But anyway, you know, in video games, like in Star Wars video games, you just go up into space and you're in space. They never show anything like atmosphere effects or anything like that. They don't show the heating up effects in the atmosphere. In fact, I'm almost convinced that's why you always see some blackening around the tips of X-Wings, is that plasma that you build up going into space and coming back from space on the front end, kind of like the space shuttle. But there's, I figure it's because of the shields. I figure it's because they have shields. But you would still see that buildup of plasma form across the front end of the ship. Green light. And so, Star Wars is meant to be more fantasy. And I mean the literal, fantasy versus science fiction. I don't mean it like that, where in fantasy stories you typically have stuff like elves versus science fiction. No, I mean it's supposed to be fantastic. It's supposed to be, what I just said. So, in Star Wars, it's meant to be a little different. Whereas in Star Trek, they have extremely powerful shield systems on just about every ship, so you never have that issue to begin with. There are occasions when they'll talk about something burning up in the atmosphere or atmospheric effects. But that's because Star Trek is based on science over fantasy. And I'm hoping that you're understanding where the distinction is. And then you get into something like Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. You're in your jet, you're in VTOL, so you're hovering, and then you hold the left stick forward to throttle all the way up to power up your engine. As you're bringing the engines on. It's a launch sequence. You're powering up the launch engines, which are basically overpowered afterburners. They're essentially you switching over, you're throttling up and powering on a rocket motor instead of a jet engine, is the way that I like to look at it. But they're the same. They're just extremely powerful. But the thing is that to fly using a rocket fuel in Atmo is kind of ridiculous because you would spin it up a lot faster than jet fuel. Unless you had something, say, the size of the space shuttle. And then you'll definitely burn it up a lot faster. So, I never understood it. So, the way that I think about it is that they have some jet fuel on board, some rocket fuel on board, and that they switch over from a mix for jet fuel to a mix for rocket fuel, which is part of that preparatory stage of thrusting forward and powering up your engines. And then you finally hit that launch button, you hit whatever it is, X or something, to launch, and you kind of go into an autopilot mode where you burn out and then pretty much straight up at kind of like this angle, just about sometimes like this, but for the most part you burn up at an angle, which is highly unrealistic, by the way. So then you burn up out into to space, and eventually you do go through some kind of atmospheric effects. And then it all goes dark, and then there's the stars, and you're in space. That is even more realistic than, say, an X-Wing just kind of casually flying out into space. But, you know what? Is what it is. Again, it's meant to be more fantasy than science-based. What is that rattling? Oh, it's my bike handle against my window. That is wonderful. So, in another game, which I think I mentioned before, Kerbal Space Program, in my last video, maybe even the one before that, Kerbal Space Program is meant to be a simulation of what it's like to launch something, to build and launch something into space. Which is why if you build something that can't fly worth a shit, it won't fly worth a shit. Which is basically most of my SSTO craft. SSTO, oh god, that's a fun one. That stands for Single Stage 2 Orbit. Now, an SSTO is kind of hard to achieve without the right technology, which is why it's better to try to get them about halfway through the technology tree, or towards the end. In my opinion. I mean, you can try for some early technology single stage to orbits, but I'm not going to guarantee they're coming back down. The main thing is rockets. Alright, this guy. The main thing is rockets. That's how you want to get to space. So let's talk about this for a second. You launch your rocket. It goes up. And in Kerbal Space Program, at about 10,000 or more meters, or 10 kilometers, I like to stick around 10 kilometers. So around 10 kilometers, or 10,000 meters, is when I like to start my turn. And when you're going up like that, you start something called a gravity turn, which is where you start when you start pitching your rocket like this. And you essentially are trying to cause your rocket to do kind of an up and over. What's interesting about this is, if you're going in the correct direction, you're actually getting a speed boost from the rotation of the planet. Thank you, gravity. But so you're going up and over until you get into orbit, because it's a lot easier to go that way. Oh, Tucky. I'm holding still for him. Alrighty, that was fun. So you get a little bit of a speed boost from going in the right direction, but you get out into orbit, into orbit outside of planet's atmosphere, and what happens is you're not in an orbital trajectory. Your orbit is not a good one. You're in what's called a suborbital flight path. which is where if you were to draw a line based on where you're going, it would look like a U, where you're basically going out or up and down. Very kind of an obtuse angle, if you want to even go that direction with it. But essentially, your orbit is going to look like this. You're going up into space, and gravity is pulling you right back down. Well, there's two things. There's something called the apoapsis, which is essentially the highest point of your orbit, and then there's the periapsis, the lowest point. Well, the periapsis right now is the ground. The apoapsis right now is the highest point of your orbit. And so, when you get to your... I'm talking about Kerbal Space Program here. I'm not talking real rocket science, but it is very relevant. Relative as well, but relevant's a better word for it. So, when you get... We're at a red light. When you get to the highest point, right when you start to curve back down, right before you get to that point, you would be pointing at a certain direction, usually straight parallel with the surface, and you want to burn your engines prograde. Basically burn your engines prograde, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you are essentially, or literally, you are pointing your engines in the direction that you're pointing your ship in the direction that you're going, so that your engines are pushing you further in that direction. So what this is going to do at the apoapsis, or any part of an orbit really, is push the periapsis further out, essentially pushing that opposite end of the circle further away, making it more of an ellipse than a circle. Essentially what you're doing is circularizing your orbit, which means that you are not driving like that guy. What basically it means that you are trying to make your flight trajectory a circle around the planet outside of its atmosphere. You're trying to circularize your orbit at an orbital velocity so that you stay in space. Because what happens is gravity is trying to pull you back down, but you're going so fast that you're going around, and as you go around, you're going at a high enough speed that that the planet's gravity is just causing you to go in circles around it repetitively, trying to make you fall. But because you're going fast enough, instead of coming down, you're coming down around the horizon, and then you're coming back around and around and around. You get the picture. You're going fast enough that instead of falling, you're staying in the same place, but continuously spinning around the planet. But anyway, so you run into something like this, where this works. But let's say that you want to come back down. So let's say that you want to come back down and you don't have a lot of fuel left. That was a weird noise. So you don't have a lot of fuel left. What do? Well, I'll tell you what I like to do. What you're supposed to do is you point your engines retrograde, the opposite of prograde, which means that your engines are now pointing in the direction that you're heading. The open end of the engines are basically pointing in the direction that you're heading, the opposite direction of where they started. And you turn them on. what that's going to do is you're going around this way. What that's going to do is it's going to start slowing you down from going in this direction because you're burning this way while you're going this way. So you're slowing down, slowing down, slowing down. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull your orbit like this until it basically, if I were to do this, what's going to happen is it's going to bring in the periapsis, the opposite end, is going to get smaller and smaller and lesser and lesser and lesser. Now, here's the planet, here's your orbit. So you're basically coming down. You're bringing that down. I'm gonna go around this person. And so that's how you come down. Let's say you don't have enough fuel though, but you have a lot of something called monopropellant in Kerbal Space Program. Monopropellant. I'm sure it has another name in real life. Monopropellant is used in Kerbal Space Program for the reaction control system, the RCS thrusters. These are tiny little thrusters that don't put out as much power as the engines, that are pointing in every direction. Like if you look at the space shuttle, you'll see those little holes in the nose and holes all over the place. And if you watch any movies or any kind of video where they're maneuvering a thing in space, and you start seeing like tiny little puffs of gas coming out of it as it's rotating and turning, that's the reaction control system. It controls the direction that the ship is going. It allows it to rotate and turn in different angles all at once, or stop moving altogether. And so what I like to do is use the reaction control systems, whatever fuel is left, to keep burning in retrograde. I mean, all you have to do in Kerbal Space Program anyway, all you have to do, and I'm sure you can do it in real life too, is, because that's what the space shuttle does, all you have to do is get your flight path to where you are going through the atmosphere. And that atmospheric drag will slow you down. And what's going to happen is going through the atmosphere of the planet will slow you down enough to where you can, land. Not sure what I want to call this, because I called the last video the nighttime one from last night it was like Science and Physics Part 2. I don't even know why I called it Science and Physics. No, it was Science Fiction and Physics. That's what I called it. So I think I'm not sure what I want to call this one. Probably going to be a Part 3 Science Fiction and Physics, or maybe Gaming and Physics, Games and Physics. I don't know. So what I want to start doing, since I'm almost where I need to be, what I want to start doing is detailing in each video, is detailing how different types of craft launch and land. Not really relevant to Kerbal Space Program. Who is honking? Probably over there. So not really relevant to Kerbal Space Program, but I want to go on and talk about how different rockets take off and land. Not really different ones, actually. I really don't care about a lot of different ones. I'm more interested in rockets like the Soyuz. Wow, we have a green light and there are still cars coming through the intersection on the left. I wish there was like a cop car around. That would have been great to see. So anyway, they're never here when you need them. when it comes to intersections and cars coming through at red lights. Like when the light turned green, the guy ahead of me, if he would have just started to go, this big semi basically would have rammed right into his side, because that guy was not stopping at the red light. Neither was the truck that was behind him, even though we already had a green light. Yay, good drivers. Sarcasm. So, I want to talk about how ships or aircraft or rockets, real or otherwise, come up and down. Excuse me. A lot of moving today. You know, I wanted to detail things like the Soyuz, the space shuttle, the one that brought the Apollo missions, the Apollo missions, how they were brought to the moon and how they landed, took off, and came back, and then came back into the atmosphere and how they landed. I want to talk about those. Now, I'm not going to go into some super crazy detail on how it all works and how it all goes together, but I do want to go over how they go up and down. I'm going to give some, brief, but still sort of relatively detailed and bits of information, kind of the simplified version of it on how it all works. And all the way over onto the curb without hitting the garbage can. As for me, I'm here where I needed to be, and I'm going to go on ahead and say bye for now. And I think I might do some of these a little more often, these face ones.